All right. So, if you're new here and if you haven't subscribed or haven't seen any of our content before here at Learn to Draw Manga, we talk about the manga making process and we've spoken to hundreds of aspiring mangakas and even our pro mangaka mentors. So, it's great to have you guys here. It's great to have like-minded people all pursuing the same thing or all wanting to pursue the same thing at least. So that's great. Super glad to see so many enthusiastic people in the chat. Welcome to the stream. Now, today we'll actually be talking to one of our students who wants to leave a personal legacy with his manga. Now, our student Steven, he's embarked on his journey as a beginner mangaka to create manga to inspire others. Yes, and like I said, I think everyone as artists, even if you don't make manga or if you're just like a writer or a storyteller, we all want to inspire others with our work. And whether we realize it or not, most of us dream of leaving something behind, a story, a message, or at least a piece of ourselves that outlives us. And it's like this student of ours is places a big importance on legacy, basically. And legacy, I think, is more about than just success. It's about impact. It's about creating something that, again, inspires others, sparks hope, or helps someone feel seen and understood, and even long after we're gone. So for Steven, manga isn't just art, it's his way of contributing to the world one story at a time. And again, as artists, I think we can all relate to that. So we make art not just for our own self-fulfillment, but for there's also a purpose behind it. And hopefully we can leave a positive impact to anyone who manages to see our art or at least read our work. So yeah, today we'll hear how our student is turning that dream into a reality. All right. So without further ado, let's meet our student, Steven. Steven, could you please introduce yourself? Say hi to the chat. I think a
Hello,
lot of
my
people are looking
name's
forward to seeing you. All
yeah.
right. Yeah, go ahead.
I can't see the chat, but my name's Steven. Um, I'm from Texas. I grew up mostly in Texas and then partially Oklahoma. And after high school, the the Great Recession hit, so there wasn't a lot of jobs. So joined the army, went places, married my wife when I was about I think 22 years old, I think, and we've been married 11 years, and now we're just doing our thing, and just happy to be able to finally do what I wanted to do since I was a kid. Just never had the opportunity, but I'm still alive, so I might as well.
All right. So let's go ahead to the first question. Now, Steven,
hmm
what initially sparked your interest in drawing manga?
Manga specifically was I've been moving around a lot lately, and because of that, I haven't really been able to put down roots anywhere for a long time, since I was a kid.
Mm-mm.
So I never really got that opportunity to really do what I wanted since I was young. I kind of always got pushed into things that I just had to do, not what I wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And finally I had too much time on my hand and I had nothing to do with it. And it gave me a lot of time to really think about what I actually wanted. And I always wanted to do something where I could tell a story, but I want to do it mostly independently because I don't want to sacrifice what I believe is a good story. It's not the same thing as critique, right? It's like the core of a story. I don't want to sacrifice it. And when I started looking at different things, mangas and comics came out on top, but mangas have more of a bit more of like an independent flow to it compared to the modern comic industry. And I don't like how wordy comics are, really. And I'm a very visual learner, and mangas, there's whole contests for just silent mangas, you know? And so I just started gravitating toward that concept, but I really didn't get really into it until one day I was talking to my wife and I knew her favorite anime was One Piece. I never watched it. And I just decided I'm gonna sit down and watch it. You know, it's kind of a goofy looking show. Why not? And I was hooked. I get to Arlon Park and I was like sold. I was just hooked, like really, really hooked. Still am.
Hmm.
And something about it, just the goofiness of One Piece, how it can tell such a soulful story, but have this art style, it made me think, you know what? Because I don't really want a serious art style either, but I want to tell a very heartfelt story. And I felt, you know
Mm.
what? If Oda can do that for since I was a kid,
Mm.
if he could do that and he can accomplish this, why can't I? Maybe not to his level, but it means it's possible. Your style doesn't really hold you back. It's your story that holds you back or puts you forward in the world. So I thought, I believe in
Mm.
my story. I know I can do something good. So then I was like, okay, I have to make my art. So that's really when I saw that art style and I was like, it's possible. This is huge still to this day. So it really inspired me to really just try to see what I could do.
Mm. Okay. That's really great. That's really great how One Piece inspired you and managed to like spark that fire in you, I guess. So I want to ask, like, I guess I think a lot of artists would relate to this, but had you ever at any point, I don't know, stopped or wanted to stop drawing? Or like at any point in your journey, had you ever, I don't know, let's say almost given up and just like didn't want to tell stories, I guess?
Um, when I was a kid, yeah, that happened. But after
Mm.
making the choice to actually, but even before drawing like doing the course, um, I knew this is what I want to do, and it's the only way realistically I can go forward. Um, I thought
Mm.
about making video games. But you need a whole team for that. Unless you're a small indie, and I can't really accomplish what I want with that. I like manga because you realistically, it is possible just to have paper and a pen. It won't be
Mm.
amazing, but if you think about it, that's really all you actually need. It's just we use better stuff, right? We use more stuff, but down to its core, it's a piece of paper and a drawing. That's it. And to me,
Mm.
that's the strongest. That is my big draw for manga, and that's very visual, very, very visual. So I never really, it's never crossed my mind to stop. Not a day. I've had bad days. I'm not
Mm.
going to say I haven't. I've had very bad days where I just feel I look at what I drew that day and I just struggled the whole day and I go to bed upset. But then the
Mm.
next day, it could be one of my best days. So there,
Yeah.
I'm very 50-50. I've had very good and very bad days back to back, but I've never felt like giving up ever.
Mm. And I think you mentioned before in one of our talks that you used to make up stories when you were younger. So, like, what was that like? How did it
Uh,
feel when you decided to actually, okay, I want to tell stories, like, full stop,
yeah.
seriously? Yeah.
So I guess there's two main things. One, I grew up in the 90s and we didn't have the internet, or some places did, but I didn't. And so really my only thing I really did was watch movies and play video games. That was it. And play outside, right? And when we would play outside, we would have to make up our own stories. What game are we playing, right? And then when I would sit down and play video games, the big one was I would play a lot of Zelda, Ocarina of Time on
Mm.
64. And I noticed the game never really told you why you were doing most of the stuff. Not the main story, but all the side stuff, like why is this box here? Why is that heart container up there? And I just started making up stories in my head. Like I would literally just imagine somebody putting that box there for some imaginary reason, just because as a kid I was annoyed that they didn't tell me. And I was kind of like that type of kid who wanted to know everything about the world. I just wanted to know because if I knew, it made the world feel more real to me. And I really wanted to be invested in this story. And so then I ended up starting to draw comics as a kid. I drew one where so in the very first Ocarina of Time, in the very first village, the sword is hidden behind the village, and you have to crawl through a hole. You have to go get it. I drew a comic of the character who put the sword there and why he did it. And I can't
Mm.
really remember a lot of it because it was so long ago. But I just started drawing little comics of video game characters usually, and Star Wars was another one. And I just drew kind of side. Basically, I was drawing side stories. of
Mm.
stuff that they never answered and that I wanted answered. So I put my own answers. And
I think yeah, that's kind of like your own little canon fan fiction,
yeah, it was
I
basically fan
guess.
fiction, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as a
Yeah.
kid, I'm just like, oh, they didn't tell me. They suck. I'm gonna do it, you know? But really it's just fan fiction.
Yeah, but like that's cool actually how you get so absorbed by a story that you just want to know more. Like what happened to
Right.
this character? And if the author of that story like doesn't give you answers, okay, I'll write it myself. And I think that's so cool, honestly. Which is why like fanfic writers get a lot of flack, but like it's I find it so fascinating how we get so absorbed and we get so fascinated by a world that we just want more of that world basically. And if it takes us having to write it ourselves, then
Yeah,
let's
and as an
go.
adult,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand more nowadays, as an adult, like it's not that necessary for everything to be answered, but that's the first
Yeah.
thing that really inspired me. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that even just that is enough to inspire someone to, okay, I want to tell stories. Even something that simple. I mean, it may seem small, but it could you never know what could inspire you.
Right.
So, all right. Now, before you set out to make manga, you mentioned that there were some external factors holding you back. I think you mentioned a rough childhood and going into the military. So, what was it about those particular experiences that affected you and your journey?
Yeah, well, basically when I was a kid, we just didn't have a lot of money. And there were a lot of times where they we didn't pay the electric bill basically for whatever reason. Many different reasons why. But so there were times where I just didn't have electricity, so I can't play my video games, which gave me more time to try to draw.
Mm.
And there were other times where I don't know where we're going to move. And, we're always changing who your friends are. So, and then by the time I get into high school, it's a little bit more stable, but just for a little bit longer than normal. And then right when my high school ends, the recession hits and the job market just collapses. My mom lost her job. I couldn't get a job. We move around a lot more to a different family. And I just didn't have time to even think about drawing because I'm just thinking about what am I going to do for rent and money. And just the real world just suddenly hits you because you're a kid. You don't really think about these things. You don't think about time. And then it catches up one day and you're just sitting there thinking, now it's on your shoulder, not on your parents anymore. You have to stand. But there was no real foundation, you know? And I didn't want to just wait around for something to happen because nothing was happening. So I just joined the military and I was not a strong guy. I got strong, but I was not strong. I was definitely one of the weaker guys for sure. And, but in a way, I wouldn't change any of that because all of that was necessary, I think, for me to finally figure out what I actually wanted to do. Because if I grew up different, I would have just done something purely just to make the biggest paycheck. Instead, what I'm doing is I want to have decent money, right? Like anybody. But having a hard life kind of reevaluates your perspective of life and you kind of figure out not not really what matters, but what feels right, I guess. Because everybody's gonna have a different opinion on life, I guess. So
Mm.
that rough childhood, as rough as it was, and as difficult as even my 20s were,
Mm.
as you get older, at least for me, um, it's the whole it. Without it, I wouldn't be who I am, and I can't imagine myself as a different person. So I don't know what it would have been like. But as a kid, of course, I hated it. But as an adult, I somewhat appreciate it. I really don't know what I would have been without that type of childhood. Maybe I wouldn't like myself. Maybe, pain first and then gain later. Maybe it's had to happen that way. I don't know.
Mm.
But
Mm.
I'm happy in a way it did because I also found my wife because of this process. I met her in Korea because I went to the military. And she's a big reason I did this because I always second guess myself. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. And then she just said, just do it. And I just listened to her because she knows best. She's usually right. So this whole process from my childhood was almost like a domino effect to get to this point. So I would not change it, even the hard parts.
Mm, all right. So I know I want to like talk about a bit about your military experience, I guess. You did mention like once you got out of the military, like you felt a bit
Hmm.
listless or
Yeah.
you didn't know what you wanted to do. But at some point you got to the point where okay, I want to make manga. So how did you get there?
Yeah, that hit really hard. Because like I said, I moved around a lot. So in the military, moving around a lot wasn't a weird thing for me. It was normal. But even though I was moving around a lot in the military, I was always surrounded by people who had the same goals, at least in a big picture, not personal, but we were all in a unit. And even when you're with a foreign, military, you're training together. Everybody has this goal, right? And you see people from all over the world. And then one day you're just so happy to get out. You're like, oh, I could be a person again. You know what I mean? Because when you join,
Mm,
you are knowing you're going to give up a lot of your rights, but that's the trade. You know you are doing that if you are, a volunteer, right? So
yeah.
once you get out of the military, you're only thinking of all the freedoms you're going to gain, but you're not thinking about what you're losing. And then suddenly you're not sure why you feel weird about it. And then all these doubts start coming back up. And you have to kind of reevaluate your life as why do I feel worse? I thought I'd feel better. And for me, a lot of it was just that I felt like I didn't have a purpose anymore. Because for me, um, it kind of seems almost like narcissistic to say, but for me, I just can't be happy with just working a job for money. There has to be something bigger behind the job. I don't care how much money it is. There has to be something that feels valuable. Like there has to be a value for my work, something that I feel means something more, not just to producing something or meeting a quota. And I did a few jobs and they were fine. They paid fine, but they just didn't make me happy. And then one day, I guess you could say I kind of just hit a very low point mentally where I just
Mm,
felt very, you know, I get in a weird way isolated, but it's the worst kind because you're surrounded by people. I had family and friends, my wife, but
yeah.
something just wasn't right. And that's even weirder because you don't know how to explain that to somebody. And I'd say for a good month, I was in a pretty deep depression, I would say. But then everything just got clear suddenly. I don't know how to explain it. Because I felt like nothing I did mattered, it meant anything I did after could be anything I wanted. Because if you're at the bottom, I almost had this vision in my brain, right? Because I imagined how I feel. I
Yeah.
imagined I was at the bottom of a well and I looked up and all you can see is the sky. And it just felt like there's nowhere else to go but up from where I'm at. So that's what I did. And it wasn't perfect that day, but that was when I realized I have time. I actually have freedom. The problem wasn't that I had nothing, it's that I didn't choose to do something. And that's when I was like, what do I want to do? What is my choice? I have free will finally. I'm not this kid, who's poor with his family. I'm not in the military. I could do what I want. So what do? I just wasn't aware that the gun was shot, the starting gun. I didn't hear it, but it was there.
Mm,
And I had to like actually willfully force myself to listen to it. And that's really when it happened.
right. So you basically you took stock of where you were at in life. You had
Right.
to seriously sit down and think, okay, what's wrong? And you realize, okay, the issue is I haven't done anything, you know?
For
So,
myself. Yeah.
yeah, for yourself. So you took action. You finally took action. You finally realized, oh, what am I doing? I'm just sitting here. I should actually go for something. And that something was telling your story, telling the
Right.
stories you want to tell through your manga. So I guess at this point, I want to ask, like, why manga specifically? I mean, I know you said that you were inspired by One Piece and all, but what was it about, I guess, One Piece? You don't have to like just talk about One Piece, but I guess mangas that could have inspired you to want to pursue making manga seriously. Like, What was it that made you choose manga? Yeah.
So once I hit that point of like knowing I need to do something, I started shopping around, I guess. What can I do? What can I do? Where my main criteria was I need to be as independent as possible, at least for a time, and have the ability to stay as independent as possible because I I've always cared a lot about art and movies. Even when I was in the military, I wasn't drawing, but I read books, I watched movies, I watched anime, and I always would like look at the deeper details of characters and like really think about it a lot. And I would like kind of headcanon. What would my story be? And I started making stories in my head for years. And so when I sat down and thought about what medium I wanted to choose, most of them had something that required going through a studio at every level. Because, for example, if you want to make a game and you're just one person, unless you're going to use like RPG Maker or build your own engine, or you're very limited and it's going to take a lot longer because you're going through software. So I was like, well, and even if I got big, I would have to go through a team usually, designers, all kinds of different levels, a studio, right, who develops it and publishes it, and then they have to put it on a shelf. So I was looking for what had the least amount of barriers to entry to where I would be able to preserve my own artistic integrity to my story. And that's when I got down to the thing I did as a kid. It just made sense. I was like, just drawing. Um, all you need is the ability to draw and the ability to think about a story. And there's really very little. If you want, you can make this more of a institutional thing. You can go through stuff, but if you also want, you could self-publish at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And that self-publishing, that's not my end goal, but that's always an option. And to have that as an option was a big, major plus in that. I was like, okay, so drawing. And I chose manga specifically because mangas are much more on show, don't tell. And I
Right.
like I like writing. I love reading and writing a lot. But if I'm going to draw as the primary medium, I would prefer a show, don't tell aspect because that's a universal language. Humans know when we look at another human, doesn't matter where they're from. You know when a human's crying, that's a language we all understand when they smile.
Yeah.
And I feel like that removes barriers. And that's what I really want to. I want to remove as many barriers as possible between me and the reader. And so manga seems like the best case for me.
Right. I mean, that's great that you were so drawn to manga and how like the whole aspect of it, like with manga itself, it's all about showing and not telling, exactly like you said, where you let the panel, you let the art, you let the scenes speak for themselves. I mean, it's because it's a very, as it's a very static medium where it's unlike a movie where you have moving pictures, you have audio, you have sounds actually coming through the screen, but it's about knowing how to present scenes, how knowing how to draw them, knowing how to like frame them and present them in a way that it flows naturally and it's easy for people to read. And like you said, it's a universal language now at that point where you try to connect to a reader through your art, and like learning how to do that does take some time. I mean, with
Mhm.
beginner, especially with beginners, like I guess it's kind of hard to be able to fully present your vision when you don't have all of the skills yet, you know?
Right.
So now I guess I want to ask, at this point you've decided you want to make manga. So, who are your sources of inspiration? Like, who are your manga heroes, I guess?
Yeah, because I never read a manga until a few months ago. I've only ever watched anime, and so I've known a lot about stories. But like for example, I didn't know Brotherhood for Full Metal existed until Brotherhood came out. I thought the anime was the
Mm.
legit thing, and so you know what I mean. So I'm an anime fanboy. I just didn't read mangas. So
Mm.
there are good and bad things to that, though. So for me, I kind of was somewhat of a blank slate to where I could just look at something and say, what do I like about this? I don't really have a lot of strings attached to anything really. So I started just taking a lot in at once. And I did watch a lot of anime when I was younger. So that's really my only experience with the entire medium of manga until I joined the class, really, right? So the things that
Mhm.
really, really inspired me, the more I looked into them, beyond just the stories, right, and the art styles, FLCL was one of the big early ones for me. Fully Cooley, which the picture
Ooh.
right there, the boy, the third from on the second row, third one. Um,
Yeah.
be, because this is when I started realizing I really like slice of life because it's a little bit of everything. You can kind of have a lot of freedom with a slice of life, and I liked FLCL because I watched it at the perfect time. I was also coming of age when I saw FLCL, and back then anime was pretty new in Western countries. Like it existed for a while, right? But it wasn't really big until the mid 2000s. That's when it really started getting big, and you started to see it on TV more than just Pokemon and Sailor Moon. It started to be all kinds of stuff, right? And it felt a little edgy almost because it was this different thing. It was these cartoons that were darker or that had a different story. It wasn't just Looney Tunes, right? Or Family Guy
Right.
or Simpsons.
Yeah.
So FLCL was a big one. I liked the story a lot. I loved how even in the anime, it would switch between animation and then there was a scene where they're at a dinner table and it switches to manga in the animation. It becomes a manga. Like they don't even animate it. It's just flat and they're just scrolling. And I remember
Mm.
seeing that thinking like I love how it's able to get across a story while changing the art style so drastically. That breaks so many rules that I'm used to, right? You don't change the
Right.
art style in the middle, but it did. And it broke a lot of molds in my brain when I saw that happen. And then after that, um Full Metal was another big one because I liked how Full Metal could be very serious and dark, but also very funny. And
Mhm.
for me personally, that's how I would want to tell a story because I feel like you can't hate unless you've loved, and you can't laugh unless you've cried because it doesn't have context. It doesn't have you don't know what the other side feels like. So if you're laughing, how do you know what it feels like to really be happy unless you've been really sad? You have that comparison in your brain to having your bad days and your good days. And Full Metal is very good at doing that, even within the same episode. So it showed me that it's fine to have mixed emotions, and I started gravitating towards mixed emotions. I like melancholy stuff. I like nostalgia. These are very weird, hard emotions to describe,
Right.
and so a lot of there's tons. But then later was One Piece, where I just love the freedom feeling in One Piece, where it's how I feel. It's not about what people think of you; it's what you think of yourself. And if you think you're doing the right thing and you trust yourself and you believe in yourself, the right people will come along. And it doesn't matter if people criticize you, you listen. But if you really think you're doing the right thing, you don't need to impress people. They will they will like you for who you are. You don't need to hide who you are. And a lot of One Piece felt like that, where
Yeah.
it's just a bunch of weird, dumb people who just come together, and they're not trying to be anything else, in that show. So or manga. See, I watched it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of these stories at their core was really just about people trying to find themselves or trying to figure out what they're doing in their life. And
And you
that's how I
connected
felt.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I connected a lot with just people trying to find out their place in the world and what they really want to do. And then when they find it, they don't give up on it. And it sounds
Mm.
corny, but there's nothing really else about being a human to me. That's really what it's about.
Right.
And so those are the big ones for me. Tons of others, of course, DBZ and so many, Kindergarten Wars, so many. But those were the
Yeah.
three big ones.
Yeah. Yeah, like shonen anime, shonen manga definitely has that charm to it wherein you have these main characters who are young and they go through all of these like extraordinary challenges, but at the end of the day, at the very core, they're young people trying to figure themselves out, trying to figure out, okay, what do they want to do with their life, what path do they want to go on, and what do they need, what does it take for them to get there. And I mean, with shonen, typically there's like this training arc where they have to like actually grind and actually learn how to achieve their goal. They have to learn the skills they need to have in order to achieve whatever goal they've set out to achieve, you know? So I guess that leads us to like, now you've established that, okay, you want to make manga. Now, what did you try to do to learn by yourself, basically? Like, how did you learn to draw manga, at least before joining the course?
First thing I did was um, I had to get the material, and I am kind of a well, I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I knew if I went with just paper, like traditional methods, it would take me too long because I need to, erase. So I got an iPad and I got a very normal, just Procreate, and all I did really was I was very well aware I am not good. You know, I'm good at just looking at it and be like, what do I actually need to do? I'm like, I need to be better. My story's in my head. I can get to that later. So I started just getting pictures of different animations that I liked, and I would just put it to the side and just, freehand it. Just look to the left, draw it. And I did that for probably 2 months. And really, that's all I really did. I was just basically just drawing what I saw, what I liked. And I
Mm.
thought if I just keep doing this, I'll start to pick up stuff. I'm a very trial and error kind of person. I'm not a textbook person. I don't I don't like books in that way,
Right,
right?
right.
I'm a do it, screw it up, do it again, screw it up a little less type of person. And I just have to do it that way. That's the only way I've ever learned. Even in the army, I screwed up a lot. I basically just learned until people stopped yelling at me. So that's I wish I could learn other ways. I can't. I just know who I am. I can't. That's how I do it. So that's all I did was I just kept drawing until I started hating my art less. And then I
Mm.
started to kind of like it here and there.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I guess I think we could all relate to that. Learning a new skill is always going to be a process of trial and error. You're always going to mess up. So, but with every single mess up, you always improve, at least little by little, every single time, you know? So that's what's great about learning something new for the first time, is that even though you're making slow progress, you're still making progress every single time you practice, because the good thing is you keep practicing and you keep doing it again and again, as many times as you can, and until you, like you said, feel less um like your art doesn't suck.
Right.
Like, yeah, basically. So I guess at that point, you've been making a bit of progress by yourself. So what made you want to join our program then?
That's the big one because I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I'm also a procrastinator. So the worst of both peas.
Right.
It's horrible being both of those.
Mm.
I'm a very manic person. I won't do anything for a week if I have a 2 week deadline. And then I'm like, I got a week and then I got 2 more days. I got 4 days, 5 days, whatever. You got 3 days. Okay, I got to work. I'm that kind of person sometimes, right? And so, uh, and I'm also not a type of person. I don't like schedules. I don't like lists. I don't like anything like that. It just bothers me. It makes me feel unnatural,
Mm.
right? It
Mm.
really bothers my brain. I hate the concept. But at the same time, you have to do things you don't like often to get better.
Mm.
And I was talking with my wife and I started seeing the YouTube clips because I started looking up different YouTube channels and different video guides how to draw. And some were what I was looking for, some weren't. And then I ended up seeing well, the Learn to Draw Manga page.
Right.
And I started watching it and it would talk about art in the way I would kind of think about it, where it wasn't just about the lines. It was just a lot of more deeper meaning behind art and why we make that line and stuff. And I thought, I know how I am. And when I was in the military, I did a lot of things that were hard. but mostly it was because somebody was on my back. And
Yeah.
I'm I kind of need somebody on my back. I have a lot of I feel like personally I have a lot of skill and potential, but
Yeah.
I need somebody on my back a lot of the time. It sounds weird, but I just need that,
Yeah.
right?
Keep you
And
accountable,
yeah, and
right?
I realize I know I will eventually get somewhere on my own, but if I had
Mm.
something to kind of help keep me accountable, and if I had some structure, because I'm not going to make my own structure, I'm very bad at it. If I had a structured system to help me learn, that might help. And so I talked it over with my wife, and she thought it was a great idea because she loves lists. Her favorite day is sitting behind a spreadsheet. She loves it. So when she saw me talking about school, right? She's from Korea.
Mm.
So when
Yeah.
she saw me wanting to do this, she was like, "Yeah, do it." And I was still kind of apprehensive. And then I talked to somebody, maybe it was, I forgot who I talked to, but it just, I just decided to say, you know what? I'm not even going to think about this. I overthink things. I'm just going to say yes and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to stop overthinking things because I need to move
Mm.
forward. So I forced myself to basically say, hey, I want you on my back now. I know it's going to bother me, but I need that. So I just had to figure out what I actually needed to accomplish my goal, not what felt comfortable. And because without that, I don't think I would have accomplished what I have in such a short time. It would take me a lot longer.
Mm.
And I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, you know what? This is my time. I need to catch up as fast as I can. So that's
Yeah.
really the big one was just realizing I need something, some kind of structure.
Right. Right. And now you're here. Now you're in the
Yeah,
program. And it's
I have a lot of
been
structure now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You've been going through the sessions, you've been working with our mentors. You definitely you've been following like the course material and all that. So like yeah, you definitely have support and now you have a structure to guide you through okay what is it you need to what are the things you need to learn what are the skills you need to develop so you've joined the course back in July I think and 4 months later you made this yonkoma on screen I think we talked about this briefly earlier but this
Hmm.
isn't your very first yonkoma but this is like your first finished
Finished one,
yonkoma
yeah.
right and like honestly, when I first saw this, I was impressed because we recently held a Yonkoma manga challenge on the channel. I'm not sure if any of you guys know if you guys managed to miss that, but we got over like 300 Yonkoma submissions from our viewers. We got a lot of great submissions, but I guess it's safe to say that not everyone can make a good or even a decent Yonkoma on one of their first tries. Like there are very few tries, very few first tries, I mean. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, wow, this is good. So what do you think were the key lessons or techniques that you've learned so far that have helped you get to this point or at least significantly impacted your art and like your process?
There's, to be honest, there's so many. Like I'm gonna just straight up sell the Learn to Draw manga program because there the problem is when you're starting out, at least for me, I'll just speak for myself at least. I
Yeah.
would probably say this is common though. You feel kind of like you're like a dog in a ball pit. There's just so many ways to look, and you're just not sure what can you focus on first. There's just so many things you could think about. So that structure helped me prioritize in an order that was realistic, right?
Right.
Work on this, and then with that you could do this and this and this, right? So the big ones were making my shots less flat because a lot of my first sketches were very flat, where they were very same
Mm.
angles, very same perspectives, and it felt stale and boring. And these are the type of things where you don't think about it when you're doing it because you're focused on the story is there. It's like, yes, the story's there, but I don't want to look at it. So we're not making a Charles Dickens book. You can go write that. You're in a visual medium. So you need to first have people look at it and say, I like looking at that. And then if you can get people to like looking at it, then they might pay attention to it, right? So for me, a big part was paneling, which, you know, Yonkama is
Mm.
just 4 panels, but with the angles, the perspectives, keeping things interesting. So that was one thing. Another thing was, I mean, just, there's kind of stuff that's not even really about drawing. It's about how you feel when you draw.
Right.
Because I would practice, and when you're practicing, you don't really have a style. And this is one of the early things I overthought, where I was like, what is my style? And Yazawa Sensei and a few of the coaches would say, you you can't answer that really. That's just going to come through experience. And to
Right.
try to find a style is defeating the purpose because style is natural. Like Toriyama and Oda, and even I'm going blank on his name. Oh, I forgot his name. Who made Astro Boy, the godfather of manga, right? They weren't trying to do a style. They just did that. After all that practice, that's what came out. And
Mm.
so then it's like, okay, so I'm not going to think about style. But then you start thinking, at least I started thinking like, okay, so if style's going to come naturally, what what should I how should I draw? And I don't want my style to be normal, but at the same time, you need perspective on
Right.
what normal is, and then you can kind of bend, you can mold what normal is, right? Because
Right.
Oda's ears are very low. Dragon Ball's eyes are like these big stained glass windows, right? And none of these are real, but it's their style. So it helped me think about, okay, I'm going to practice something normal. So I started
Right.
practicing basic stuff, right? The eyes should be relatively here. The head should be relatively this size, stuff like that. So it, a lot of it was just basically guideline, like kind of a basic work in here first and then see how you could branch out once you got this down. And that
Right.
structure, I was able to branch out into more interesting things once I had that structure down. And then when I branched out, like on this one, even now when I look at it, there are things I would do different. Art Crumbs told me, for example, just for anybody listening, my raccoon, um, Art Crumbs mentioned it can have a kind of triangle stance. So that's more of an action stance. And even my reference had that stance, and I just overthought. I just didn't think about it because I was like, this is good enough for now. So even when you
Mm.
are happy with something, you can always learn from even your own work. What can you do better? So there's really just so much, but really it's just that structure. And
Right.
that structure really helping you nail down these things and then move on to these things, then move on to these things. So if you're feeling lost, for me, that structure really helped me prioritize what A, B, C, D. And that
Right.
speeds up the process and makes you feel less lost and you feel like you're actually learning.
Right. Like you said, like you have to learn something normal or basically learn the rules first. Learn the
Yeah.
basics first before you go ahead and break the rules because that's what a lot of seasoned pro mangakas do, like
Yeah, they
Oda.
break them all the time.
Yeah, they break the rules all the time. They stretch the boundaries of perspective drawing even sometimes. So it's like that's just one example of how they sometimes break the rules, but they also toe the line with, okay, well, what's real and what's not, how to realistically draw bodies. I mean, with manga, you don't really need to aim for realism because you're trying, at the end of the day, you're telling a story that shouldn't that it usually with fantasy stories like with Oda, they're dealing with worlds that aren't as bound by the rules of reality as we are, so with pro mangakas who deal with like these amazing extraordinary plots and stories that have power systems, and have like magic and all of that, they really stretch the rules, break the rules, and do basically whatever they want. They have so much freedom with how they draw their manga and how they make their art, basically. But
Hmm.
that's because they've gone through years and years of practice, right? A lot of these pro mangakas, they started out being manga assistants to other mangakas, and they learned from those pro mangakas while they were being manga assistants. So yeah, it's definitely a long journey to get to where you want to be, where you just, okay, I have the freedom to do whatever I want with my manga. But as a beginner, you got to learn the basics, got to learn the rules first,
Yeah, and
right?
that's the primary point, I guess, is
Yeah.
that's really what I needed. And what really helps as a beginner is don't overthink all this other stuff. That'll come later. This is what you
Right.
focus on. And then when you get that foundation, you start to feel you can build on top of it finally. That's when you start to find what your quote unquote style is. It just happens off of that foundation naturally.
Right, right. Okay, great, great. Now, I guess what now that you've been in the program for a while, what do you think are the biggest challenges you've faced so far? Like what has been the hardest thing to learn?
I'll start on the easy one as just a technical level.
Mm-mm.
I struggle a lot with hair, and this is actually a good picture to show because
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different hairs here. Everybody seems to have different struggles with certain aspects. I've heard people about, oh, feet are hard, eyes are hard, pupils, noses, right? All kinds of things that are just something in our brain because we're human. Technically, for me, hair, and this week or this month, I actually started to really nail down hair finally, where I
Yeah.
could draw hair my own way, not without a reference, right? But beyond that, not at a technical level, but more of a like a philosophical level, right?
Mm-mm.
For me, the biggest one was feeling like you're not unique or feeling like you're not because when you're, practicing, all you really have is things that inspire you. You don't have anything of your own in the beginning. You don't have a
Right,
style or your own voice yet.
right.
So all you could really do is stand on other people's shoulders and figure out what they did. And in that early phases, I think most people go through this is where you start to feel like I'm just a hack. I'm not doing anything unique. I'm just copying what they did. And then you start to kind of have more experience and you start to mature in your own who you are. And you start to realize the people that, like, for example, Oda is like my number one, right? And, but then, you look at the way Oda spoke about his art when he was starting. He said the exact same things that I was saying about Toriyama. And you look at Toriyama, he said the same things about like Astro Boy, you know? So art is like this, it's like this thread that's everybody's connected and it just keeps going. And nobody ever gets anywhere without looking at something. Even
Right.
cavemen, when they painted on those caves, they looked out their caves and they looked at, I'm going to draw that, right? And they weren't looking at art, they were looking at this thing that they saw and they painted that. And then people came along and copied them. So it's like this whole process of humans just trying to express what they see and what they feel and things that inspire you. So then I started to not really think about I'm copying somebody. It's more of I am respecting their work by taking it on into my own and
Mm,
continuing this tradition of being inspired by somebody and then trying to inspire somebody else eventually, right? Because
right.
if it was me and say I'm an old man, right, and somebody said, "Oh, your art inspired me," and I practiced your drawing, I would feel extremely happy and thrilled, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't feel like they're a hack. I'd feel like, yeah, and let's see what you do. Because it's not just me. You've looked at probably 100 different things, right?
Right.
And so I stopped looking at it as a negative to practice other people's work, and I looked at it more as this is a natural step in the process, and I am looking at their work because that's what I like. And then if I look at 10 different works, I take a little piece of all of them and I make something new. And that's only
Right.
possible through me because I'm who I am and I'm picking these things. And that creates something a little bit unique. So that was the real big one to get over is just feeling like you actually have something to say and you
Right.
could do it in a way that's unique.
Right. I mean, I guess I think a lot of beginners can relate to that because naturally, when you've never drawn something before, at least you've never drawn enough to be at a level where you feel like, okay, I'm good at drawing. Sometimes you have to start by copying, right? So
Right.
you look at the art, the kind of art that you like. You look at the kinds of drawings, the kinds of illustrations that you like, and you say, okay, I like that. I want to try and do that. Then you try to mimic that. And that's usually how beginners start out. They start out by copying, they start out by referencing, drawing with references. And I think uh, like the example on screen, you one of the homeworks that we do in the program is that we ask you like to draw from reference, right? Because that's always a great place to start. It's not that right from the beginning you have to think, okay, I have to be super unique. I have to make sure that my art style doesn't look like anyone else's. But the reality is, if you're a beginner, you can't be thinking about that just yet
Hmm.
because you can't even draw yet in the first
Yeah, I
place.
couldn't at all, really.
Yeah, exactly. So you need, like I said, like we said before, you need to learn the basics. And usually the best way to learn the basics is by copying the professionals, right? Copying professional art, looking at how pros drew this and that, and that's why you like draw from reference. Like when you're drawing from reference, you the right way to do it is you don't just copy it mindlessly. You actually have to analyze and actually have to understand, okay, how did this mangaka, how did this pro artist draw this, and like why did they draw it this way? I guess
Hmm.
that's a huge part of it. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I can give a
you actually
quick
have to,
example of that.
yeah, go ahead.
So on my with references one, this is just one quick easy one to show how that worked for me.
Right.
And the One Piece character, her hat with the roses or flowers around it, that's
Mm.
actually kind of how I draw a bunch of roses now. That's just how I do it. I'm like, you know what? That's good for me. I love the easy way. Oda's a genius at doing something an easy way. It's like his number one skill, and I appreciate that skill. I appreciate uh, being able to accomplish something in a lazy way because that's efficiency. That's how I see it. And
Right.
Oda's a very efficient artist, right? And so little bits and pieces from all of these drawings I've done, the jawline of Boa Hancock, I learned how to do a bottom jawline just by drawing that, and that's how I do it now.
Right.
All little pieces of everything. So the more I drew, the more little bits and like making a puzzle, and that becomes who you are eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Like along the way, you will be taking bits and pieces of stuff from all of these artists that you've referenced before, right? That's natural. Doesn't mean that you don't end up with like a style that is uniquely your own.
Hmm.
What's important is like how do you make it your own, How do you make it unique? How do you make it how do you put your own spin to it,
Right.
basically, right? So
Yeah.
okay. Right. So now I guess I want to move on. Like now you're in the process of learning, you're in the process of trying to figure out, okay, what works for you, what doesn't. But I guess at some points you must have experienced like blocks
Right.
or
Right.
periods of low motivation. So
Right.
how do you overcome those?
So that actually happened recently. Last month I didn't do much. Um, because there was a lot of holidays and I had a vacation planned. And for me, I'm kind of the type of person where I get into a move, like a groove, and I could stay in it. And if I get knocked out of it, I have to drag myself back in, right? So I had like the little bit of a lazy bug. I was on my vacations. I went to the mountains and the redwood forest in Northern California and stuff to get out of the house, right? And then when I get back, I'm like, kind of enjoyed not drawing for a while. And I felt guilty about that. And I couldn't really force myself to draw either because if I just don't feel it, I just don't feel it. And I just don't have that passion to draw. So for me, I thought, why do I feel like I don't want to draw right now? I do, but I don't, right? I should, but I'm not. So what I did whenever I just had that low motivation was I basically decided to, you know what, I'm going to get this energy out of me. I'm just going to go do something that I can do, right? Something that I can't do if I was drawing. Go do that to
Mhm.
the point, because I'm kind of an introvert. So I'm like, I'm going to go be outside for a while, do stuff outside until I don't want to be outside anymore. And then I'm inside. I'm like, okay, now I'm inside. So I just started to go do stuff that I wanted to do that I felt like doing to kind of relax, right?
Right.
And after about 2 weeks of that, I started, you know what? I'm going to draw at least an hour today. Just force myself to just draw something, right? I have to draw something. So I drew an hour and I was fine. And then it started to build back up. So then it was like, okay, now I'm back in the groove. So I guess when it comes to low motivation, that's going to be very different for everybody. But for me, it was just getting in and out of the groove, making it a habit again, right? And the only real way to do it is you just have to choose. I will not let something stop me today. This has to be, even if it's a little bit. That little
Right.
bit got me into the groove. And then I don't like to stop stuff. So I would be like, okay, I didn't finish this drawing. I would just start doing sketches. This is what helped me the most. Sketch some stuff, and then I'm annoyed. Oh, I want to finish that. Oh, I don't
Mhm.
like how that looks.
Mm.
So I would just leave some sketches on the table, right, on my iPad, just leave some sketches, and that would kind of tempt me to come back. So I maybe you have to find ways to trick yourself to kind of come back a little bit, find out why.
Mm.
And for me, it was like leave some sketches of some ideas that I think are interesting and funny. And that ping pong one was one of them. I had this idea, and I was like, I had a little sketch of a couple Yankumas, and that's been my go-to. Sketch a Yankuma, leave it, and then I just like have that fire. Oh, I really want to finish that Yankuma. It's so funny, or I want to do another Yankuma.
Mm.
So yeah, it's
Mm.
just like a process of trying to find time to relax, and then you have to just tell yourself, all right, you've relaxed enough. Let's go back, and you
Right.
drag yourself back if you have that low motivation. But I've been
Yes.
on a tear for like 2 weeks now, so there's
Yeah.
probably another crash coming, probably like
Yeah.
next week because it's Christmas. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
just
it's deserved. You need to
yeah,
take a
you just
break. It's the
don't
holidays.
yeah, just
Yeah.
don't feel too bad about it because
Yeah.
one of my favorite stories is Toriyama has this comic where his character's just sitting smoking a cigarette and there's a paper in
Mm.
front of him and there's nothing on the paper and he's just like, yeah, I had a plan today to draw, but instead I watched a movie, went on a bike ride, and smoked a cigarette, and nothing happened. But that was the day. And so instead of just kicking yourself for it, be like, okay, it's okay to have those days. You're not only on Earth to draw. You're on Earth to experience life, and part of life is just going on a bike ride or going to the mountains. So don't feel guilty about taking time off. And even modern day mangakas are realizing this. Like Oda had to take a break after Toriyama died. And so it's taking a break is a natural process, but don't forget to get back into it. You know, that's the thing. If you don't get back in, what are you doing? You know, you have to really find, so it depends who you are. Find what motivates you to get back in. I can't answer that. That's just how I did it. I just tricked myself by doing sketches that I crave to finish. That's how I do it. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I think I guess another thing that's important is that you have to make sure that you keep your passion for your craft alive.
Right,
Like
right. Remind yourself.
keep remind like as much as you need to take breaks because yes, artists do go through burnout, but at the same time you have to have that balance of okay, I'm exhausted, but I'm not going to let this like ruin my love for manga, ruin my love for storytelling, ruin my love for art, you know?
Yeah, because you're exhausted for a good reason.
Exactly. Exactly. You're exhausted for a good reason. And rest is actually one way that can help keep that passion alive. Because
Hmm.
you can't have too much of something that you love 24/7 every day. You know,
Yeah, if I
sometimes you
ate
have to,
pizza every
yeah.
day, I would hate it.
Exactly. Exactly. You get sick of it if you keep going for it every single day. So you have to take a step back from time to time in order to, like, okay, I need some time for myself. I need to relax. And I don't have to be doing the thing that I love every single hour of every single day because then you get sick of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, taking the time off, taking the rest, it's what helps keep that passion alive at the same time, I guess. So with that said, how I guess how do you in situations where you finish a work and you've presented like a homework submission to one of the coaches, one of the mentors, and let's say you get feedback that you didn't expect, or like criticism where, okay, oh, I didn't realize that. I guess I should have done this better. How do you handle those? How do you handle, yeah, constructive criticism? And how has it helped you grow as an artist?
So I'd say there's two kind of ways, right? And just so long as this is actual constructive criticism, right? It's not somebody just being a hater, right? If it's somebody actually just being a hater or they just don't like your style, that's one thing. But we're not talking about that, right? So
No, 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 no.
when it comes to somebody actually criticizing your work and saying, look, you could do better here, or
Yeah.
this is something that is just not as good as it can be. When I look at that, on one hand, I look at it as on the factual basis, right? You look like, for example, this one that you pulled up, um, the coconut and the speed
Mm.
lines. I was told the speed lines are not going at the right angle, which was correct. You know, I didn't realize this, right? Because a lot of times it's hard to really know what is constructive criticism when you're new
Right.
because you're not sure if they're even right. So a program like this helps you because you know the people who are telling you this stuff have experience. They are artists. They're not just some random person that doesn't actually know what they're saying. That
Right.
maybe that they're just going with their gut, but maybe they're not even right. So in a program or when you're listening to other artists and stuff like that, they're giving their perspective from their experience. And then when they tell you stuff, it's like another set of eyes that helps you see stuff that when you're drawing, a lot of times you're very hyper focused on something, on each
Mm.
line or whatever, right?
Right.
You don't even notice things half the time. And on this one, it was about the coconut specifically, like the speed lines being at a weird angle. The coconut, the lines were because the coconut in the trees, the lines are just as dark as the one falling. So if the ones up in the tree are farther, the line should be more thin, lighter. The one falling should have thicker lines because it's getting closer. And there were a few other couple smaller things, right? So these are things where it's like these are just on a factual basis, technical basis, correct. And for me, that's an easy thing to accept because I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's obviously true, right? But then there's another level, which I would say is more of my personal philosophy on critique like that, um, especially when it's coming from somebody who has so much experience doing
Right.
something that you want to do, that you aspire to be, right? Um, so just for an example, I look at Yazawa Sensei, right? She has like so many years in this field, right? And her
Right.
personal experience. And the people who trained her had so many years. When I look at when Yazawa Sensei looks at my work for 20 minutes, that's not 20 minutes. That's like 30 years on top of that. Because that critique
Mm.
doesn't come from nothing. It comes
Right.
from all that experience that she built up to be there to tell me something, right?
Right.
So if I don't listen to that, it's not just wasting both of our time, it's wasting everybody who trained her, who helped her. All of that experience came together in a crucible to tell me that day, this is what you should look at. And it's just very arrogant to think that you can't learn anything from any of that and that just to cast it out with your ego. You can't let
Right.
your ego get in the way
Exactly.
because you're at the end of the day, the art's not for you. If I wanted, I could just keep all these stories in my head and I could just live happy. They're like, oh, that's my story. Nobody criticized it. But then it doesn't do anything. It's just in my head and I die and it's gone. And that's it. So this critique is not just necessary for you to grow, it's a part of being human and learning and the process
Right.
of getting better. And you can't skip it. You cannot ignore it. You can't go over it. You're not going to just be born unless you're Mozart, maybe, you know? And even Mozart, I'm pretty sure people criticized his work. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he learned something from somebody, right? So I would say you have to, it's beyond just learning from it, it's respecting their time and all of their experience and knowing it is it's such a valuable thing because you cannot buy
Right.
time. You can't just give a teacher 30 years. They have it, they give it to you, and that's it. They're going to be gone one day. So really take it
Mm.
in
Right.
and just get
Right.
your ego out of the way.
Right. Like our mentor Art Crom said it best. It's a beautiful way to look at it, and I do agree. I mean, Stephen, I love what you said, I guess, about the value of time. And I think time, it's the most important resource we have, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you can earn money again, but you can't ever earn back time. So you also mentioned, I think, something really powerful when you joined our program. You said, I could be happy with my life if I could at least make at least one work I could respect, even if
Right.
nobody reads it while I'm alive. It's in the world. So I'm curious, that's so profound. So what led you to having this kind of belief?
So it was a part of that really dark period after the army
Mm.
when there are a lot of people who don't make it out of the army. I'll just say that. And when you do, you kind of feel like, why did I make it out? Why am I even here? And it's because I wasn't doing anything, it just felt like, am I just going to consume? That's it. And I felt like the things that gave me happiness were from other people's effort. And so if I just took in all this inspiration and happiness and just kept it to myself, right? all these good feelings. And if I didn't try to find a way to kind of put my own spin on it or something, I just would feel like it was such a waste to even read these stories. Not for everybody, right? Other people, these stories just help them live their day and they help their family. But for me, I don't have kids. I don't really have anything that I've created that I can leave in the world, right?
Mm.
So I felt like I I started realizing at that time I was actually really scared to die, but I didn't realize it until I started getting older because you don't think about time.
Right.
And I started thinking about time a lot, and I started thinking about what am I doing with it, this resource, right? And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I'm really scared to die. But it wasn't just to die, it was to die and not do anything with that time. And so then I thought, what can I do with my time? And I started thinking about all these stories that, I mean, Gilgamesh, right? Um, any story you could think of, like Plato's writings from 2,000 years ago, all kinds of things that have survived and they've been dead forever, right? Some stories
Right.
we're not even sure who made them, but the story is still here. And in that way, I have this kind of romantic belief on art where I feel art is a true form of magic because when you look at magic, right, what is
Right.
really magic? It's something from nothing. It just
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah.
Nothing made that. It just happened. And I think there's something really interesting about how a couple lines on a piece of paper and context can get somebody to cry or to laugh. And that's really weird because it's not really anything. You didn't tickle them, you didn't touch them physically. It's just something that they looked at. And
Mm.
that to me is very powerful that that's a possibility. Like a single word can inspire a generation sometimes if it's said at the right moment. So, the One Piece is real, right? So that type of
Right.
thing is so inspiring to me because I feel like that never dies. That's always here. There's a reason people still look at a biography from a Roman emperor 2,000 years ago. They still read them, or they look at Toriyama's work today as if he's still here because he's not really gone.
Yeah.
And when I thought about that, I'm like, that is immortality. That's how you live forever.
Mm.
And that is what I want to do because then if I put my work in the world, I don't get a dollar from it. My favorite author died poor. And now Lovecraft, there are so many genres that he inspired.
Right.
And you could say everybody knows Lovecraft had problems. But when you look at his work, you look at that work and you look at what it created, Batman, comic books, that's connected to manga. Even there's so many things. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of being running from death, I'm going to chase life instead. And part of that was just saying, I'm going to refuse, just just flat out refuse, be stubborn, right?
Yeah.
The world's not going to forget me. Somehow I will leave something. And maybe 100 years go by and somehow they're like, oh, wow, this was the early age of American mangakas. This is one of the early ones, right? Who knows? You never know. Because once your art's in the world, it's not yours anymore. It's the world's.
Right.
It's in the world. And it's how people choose to take it.
Right.
And for me, that was kind of a way to just say, almost like an egotistical way, the world's not going to get rid of me. I'm going to make sure I'm here somehow, in one way or another. So however you get around it, that's how I looked at it was same way when I was going to join the army. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to just sit and do nothing. I'm going to do something. So I joined the army. Like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to that girl. Now we've been married 11 years. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell a story. And if people don't like it, some people will, some people won't.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be.
Right. I love your conviction in the things that you do. Honestly, I feel like you said, your conviction to join the army, your conviction to your wife, pursuing your wife, and now your conviction to pursuing manga and telling your stories through manga. I think that's really powerful, and it's something that a lot of beginners struggle to get to. Like they struggle to reach that level of commitment of, okay, I am gonna do this. I am gonna commit, I'm gonna focus, and I'm gonna pursue this seriously. I think a lot of beginners struggle with reaching that point because they're so hesitant and they're so afraid and they overthink. They overthink a lot of things like, what if this doesn't work out? What if I can't? make anything out of this. What if, what if, what if? So many what if scenarios go through their head, and it prevents them from actually starting, from actually taking action like you did. So I guess at the end of the day, it's a leap of faith. You gotta have courage in yourself, and also you got to know, okay, what exactly what you want, right? So I think what's great, what's so inspiring about Steven is that he took that leap of faith, and now he's making the most out of it. He's learning, he's making progress, he has a structure, and now he's slowly but steadily making progress towards his own goals. And I think that's so inspiring. And it's the reason why we wanted to interview today in the first place, because you have such a great outlook on things and how on your journey in general, which is great, honestly. I think of beginners, a lot of beginners never reach that point in your where you are right now in your journey, and it's sad because they didn't have the kind of mindset or the kind of courage to take that leap. So I hope today, for anyone watching, Steven's philosophy, Steven's mindset, yeah, be like Steven. Like, follow his example. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want it and you seriously love telling stories and you really seriously want to make manga and tell your stories through manga, then it doesn't matter if you don't have any skills. I mean, Steven didn't start out being a
Oh, it was
great artist.
terrible.
Exactly, exactly. Like everyone, no one starts out being a total genius at what they set out to do. I mean, Toriyama, it took him years before he got published. One the creator of One Punch Man, wasn't an artistic genius. He couldn't draw that well when he released One Punch Man, but now One
That's why I
Punch.
love his art so much.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Now
love
one
that.
exactly. Now One Punch Man is such a huge thing because it's his art. It's not so much his art, but it's his story, and how he presents his story, and how his stories are so fun and also so extraordinary and so out there. It's really fascinating how, despite the art, the story is just so captivating. And I think one sensei has managed to um be a genius at storytelling
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say his art is actually because of that, because that
Mm.
character is all about nothing can hold him back. He's
Yeah.
powerful. He's one punch. But that's why it's boring. So for him, it's like if you were automatically a good artist,
Yeah.
you don't there's a lot you learn in struggling at being a better artist because it forces you to really ask for advice and to get opinions and to struggle and to learn. If you don't really have that process, just like my childhood, right?
Right.
You don't know what you're going to be. And I feel like it would just be stale. I think part of art is suffering. I really think you need to
Mm.
suffer for good art. I think art that has no suffering in it, no pain, is kind of just, it's AI art, right? It's just bland. It's just
Yeah.
easy. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything. It's like a
Yeah.
plastic flower. You don't put plastic flowers on graves. You put a
Yeah.
real flower on a grave because it has meaning. It can grow and die.
And I
So,
think part of the true satisfaction of managing to achieve s- uh, like a work that you're totally satisfied with, like you totally are feel proud of, once you get to that point, once you finish, like maybe let's say your first page or your first one shot or maybe just like your first panel, and you look at it and like, wow, okay, I did this, I'm satisfied with this, I'm proud of this. Part of that is the journey it took to get there.
right.
That's what makes it all the more satisfying, that I blood, sweat, and tears. I spent so many hours like perfecting my line art, like learning perspective drawing, knowing how to shade and all that just to get to this point. And even if it's just a small thing, and at least it's something that you're proud of and you can tell yourself, I've come so far. And
Right.
I think you definitely have, Stephen. I think with the Yonkomas that you've made recently, I think you've come so far since like not drawing anything at all.
Yeah, and I have
So
so many I want
yeah,
to show now, like later, but they're still in
yeah,
sketches. But I've made so many more since then too.
yeah, yeah. So it's it's the journey, you know, like it's gonna be a long journey, but once you get to a point where you're proud of something that you've done, even if it's a small thing, like I said, like finishing a panel or just like finishing a sketch, then I feel like that would have been worth it because you've worked
Yeah.
so hard and like you've come so far already.
Yeah, when I finished that one Yankama,
Yeah.
I looked at it for like an hour, just like, wow, I finished this. There are problems
Yeah.
with it, but compared to where I was and imagine where I will be next,
Yeah.
uh, the hard work pays off.
Exactly. Exactly. Like the art without suffering is bland, basically.
Right.
Right. All right. Now, okay, great, great, guys. I hope you guys feel the same way. Hope you guys like take the time to actually put in the work because once you put in the work, once you put in all those hours, once you put in all that effort at the end of the day, it will be worth it at some point. Promise you. All right. Now, I guess moving on, Stephen, I want to ask you about your experience in the community so far. I mean, how has being part of the Learn to Draw manga community, student community, impacted your growth? Like, what's been the favorite part? What's been your favorite part about being in this community and this program?
I guess twofold. One is it's a good place to kind of show art to people who are also sensitive of their own art because when you're learning, honestly, I think maybe even pros probably still feel like this. You're always a little cautious about showing your work because it is this thing from you, right? And it comes out of you. So when people judge it, it feels a little bit more hurtful sometimes because it's not like looking at something somebody else like a house be like, I don't like how the house looks. It's something that came out of you. And so it is personal. Even if it's not meant to be, it feels personal because it's yours, right? But when you're starting out, you're very sensitive to that type of stuff. You're not sure how to take criticism or anything. So a community like this, it helps because everybody's in that boat, you know? And it just starts to feel like you're able to actually share a piece of yourself more often that you're used to. And you're able to look at other people and have people come out of their shell and say, oh, look at this, look at that. Like, oh, do you have any suggestions? So it's a good place to bounce ideas off each other. It's a good place to start to feel comfortable. Because, like I said, if you're going to make art, the whole point is to be in the world. And it's it's hard for people to do that because I think a lot of artists are very introverted, right? And they're not used to sharing themselves or their ideas. But in that type of place, with that type of community, everybody knows exactly what you're going through because they're doing it too. So it feels comfortable to try to, that's like a good place to kind of, you don't have to swim in the deep end yet. You can kind of go here with other people who know what you're doing. And it's a comfortable way to get used to this because you have to get used to it. You know, you can't just draw a book and then leave it on a shelf and never look at it and don't show it to anybody. So on that aspect, it's very good. And on a personal aspect, um, it was good for me personally to feel that everybody has a similar goal again. Because in the army, that's how I felt.
Mm.
And so now I feel like instead of everybody working on whatever job we were doing, you know, now it's like everybody's working on their own dreams and their own passions. And it kind of helps motivate you also because this goes back to on your low days where you're like, oh, I don't feel like it today. You look at the group,
Mm.
you see what they're doing, you're like, okay, yeah, I will do it. If they're doing it, they're still going, I'm going to keep going. So there's multiple levels and it can impact you in ways you probably won't expect. And I would say there's no downside to it. It's just a really good way to just get used to showing who you are and what you have to say.
Right. I mean, feeding off of each other's energy, influencing each other, like building each building each other up, you know. I think that's one great advantage to being a part of of a community of like-minded individuals, people who are basically going towards the same goal as you. Like they all everyone in this community, all of the students in our course, they all want to make manga. They all want to finish their first one shot because they want to tell their stories through their manga. And I think it's great to surround yourself with that kind of support, with that kind of people who feel the same way as you, because then they kind of push you to be better. They push you to aspire to be better. Like you see this other person who's struggling And of course, what's great about our students is that they like helping each other out. I think what's great about our students is that they offer a hand, they offer advice when a student is struggling, basically, which is
And
great, which is
that happens very often. I've
yeah,
been in the group chat where somebody's like, I'm struggling today,
yeah,
and then people will inspire them, and then they'll be back, and then they'll
yeah,
be back to pick somebody else up. Because that's part of art is just having those down days. I've had days where I just feel like, man, my art is so bad today.
yeah.
And then you get back up, and then somebody else has that, and you're like, hey, I'm here. You need to come back.
Yeah.
You can't,
Yeah.
you gotta, it's like everybody trying to pick each other up, make sure you keep everybody goes to where they're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, that's which is why it's so important to have that system, that support, So it's great. It's great, guys. Now, okay, so I guess final question. If you could give advice to your younger self when you first started drawing, like what would your advice be?
Um, Take care of your teeth better. I'm
Okay.
okay now, but I had some dental issues that really were bad for a while. So that'd be my
Mm.
first one. Besides that,
Like when you like for
I
your
guess,
younger self, I guess, who didn't
yeah,
think that
because yeah,
you wanted to pursue drawing, yeah.
because I've had this kind of, it's part of the reason I got back into drawing was I had this like weird imagination where I talked to the 10-year-old self. I've had this happen before in my life where what would I tell my 10-year-old self? Would I be happy with my life? What I would feel, I wouldn't want to tell them where I'm at, right? At that time. I want to tell them where I'm going because I'm not going anywhere yet. So that's a big reason. I'm like, I want to be able to tell my 10-year-old self, this is what I did with my life. Look forward to it. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it, right?
Yeah.
So now that I actually, now I'd be happy to talk to my 10-year-old self. I'd be like, hey, I'm not at the end, but I'm doing these good things. I did all these things. You got through it. So if I had to tell my, kid self, I would say it's okay that you're going to have to drop it for a while because you can always pick it up later and don't feel like it's gone forever because it's not.
Right. All right. Great, great advice. Great advice. I mean, so I think a lot of us can relate to feeling a bit hesitant to actually talk to our younger self, because at least for me personally, if uh, if I were given the chance to like talk to, I don't know, my 15-year-old self, I would be like, just put yourself pull yourself together. That's basically what I would want to say. I mean, you're 15. I mean, you'll figure it out at some point. Like, no pressure, but like you could be better or something like that. I mean, I think all of us can relate to the idea that, okay, there's a lot of things that I could have done differently when I was younger, but if I were to give myself a piece of advice, I would say, like, just don't sweat it. You'll figure it out. Eventually, you're still a kid, so enjoy being a kid and all that. All right, all right. So now I think that's it for our questions for Steven. So make sure, guys, we will be having a Q&A portion at the end, so make sure to stay until the end for the Q&A. I know some of you may have more questions for Steven, or you may even have more questions for us about the program, so make sure to stay until the end for that, because we will be taking in questions now. But for now, I just want to know and see, check, are you guys action takers? Do you want to seriously level up your manga art and storytelling skills and learn from industry professionals? And are you goal driven? And do you believe it's your life's mission to share your story? And are you ready to commit and reach your full potential? And are you a determined mangaka who wants to put your story out into the world by joining contests and eventually work with publishers? Because if this is you, then I want to see some yeses in the chat. Type yes if this is you. Can you relate? Are you any of these things that we just described? Let us know, because I have a very important question for you, and I have a very important uh, proposition for you, basically, because I might have the solution for you. Right. Yes. Yes, Jet Lunar. Yes, Jennifer. Yes, TMNT. Clinical. Alex. Natari. Gakusei. Monahan. Kurokurin. Yes, we have a couple of our students saying yes, of course. All right. Now I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat, so it's great to see that there are people here who are action takers. Now, if you said yes or answered yes to any of those, then we're inviting you to our online one-shot manga drawing program. You'll get the opportunity to work with our Japanese pro mangaka mentors and even published manga artists and be part of an awesome community of aspiring mangakas like yourself and just like our students, you'll learn everything from manga drawing basics to crafting a full one shot manga from start to finish, which is what our student Steven is going through right now. So, aside from Steven, you've heard what Steven has to say, you've heard what his experience in the program is. Now let's look at other students in our program. We have Donovan, who in just 4 months was able to get guidance, was able to work with our mentors and finish the first chapter for his manga. It's like it's so amazing how far um our students have come since joining the program, and Donovan is now definitely one of them. And then we have another student, Courtney, who's greatly and vastly improved in the last 9 months. And this is what she had to say about the program. You could read it up on screen, but as you can see, like this is one of her first submissions back in January this year, and now this is one of the pages of her ongoing one shot that she's currently making, fully rendered, fully shaded, and it looks great. It's awesome. She's come so far, and we're so proud of her. And then we're also proud of this next student, Eduardo. Eduardo has progressed so much after just 5 months. I mean, finished they've actually finished their first one shot and they've published it on Manga Plus Creators, and it's out now. You can go ahead and read it. We actually link it in one of our community posts, so you can check out our community page to find Eduardo's one shot. So yeah, this was his storyboard back in June of 2024, and now this is like these are his finalized pages from last month, and this is what he had to say about the program. So you can feel free to read that there. So yeah, very inspiring. Very proud of Eduardo. He's come so far, and he still has a couple of projects in the works. So he's still making manga, guys. All right. And then we have one of our more recent students, Jay, just joined the program, and this is their progress in just 2 months. They've been working with yonkomas, they've been experimenting, they've been making their own yonkomas, and they've come so far from their first submission back in October to one of their more recent submissions now. And this is what they had to say, and I felt so happy when I read this. They said, every time I have a call or have class, I always learn something new and I proceed to grow, and it makes me feel like Goku. I genuinely love LTDM and best choice I've ever made in my life joining here. And if you're seriously passionate about making manga, this place is for you. It's a new home for Jay. So glad you felt that way, Jay. Happy to have you join the course, and we're so excited to see more from you in the next coming months, in the next year even. So great job, Jay. All right. Now, you've seen our students' results, you've read how happy they are with the community and guidance from our mentors. So now my question is for you, do you want in too? Type I want in the chat if you want in. Do you want to be part of our community? Do you want to be like our students and actually learn, put in the practice, put in the work in order to like get to your first one shot, to finish your first one shot, and to actually finally start making your own manga? Type I want it in the chat if this is you. All right. Garrett, one of our students, of course you want in. You're already in. Gakase, I want in. Nice. Jet Lunar, TMNT fan, Zumi, Matari, I want in but can't right now. Totally understandable. We'll be waiting for you, though, once you do feel ready to uh, come and join us and be one of us. Jennifer, I'm still on a budget. Monahan, that's fine. We'll be waiting for you. Monahan, I'm in already, but I hope to see more people in, right? Join us. Be one of us. All right, Unbound Storm wants in. That's great. It's great to see people wanting in now. If you want to make your time making manga more meaningful and more productive than our online one shot manga drawing program is for you, because we're on a mission to accelerate your growth, all while having fun, learning together, and you will have amazing pro manga mentors to guide you. First is pro webtoon artist or of me or her, and professional illustrator Steph Pastrano. He's actually known for his amazing fan art that looks almost just like the official fan art. Actually, this is some of his work up here on the screen, beautifully rendered and all. It's amazing. And now we have the amazing now Yazawa Sensei. Stevens mentioned her before, but this is her. This is her work. She's a professional Japanese manga artist with over 30 years of experience in the Japanese manga industry. She is also the illustrator of the iconic manga turned anime known as Wedding Peach. And Wedding Peach was actually kind of a magical, popular magical girl anime back in the 90s. So if you've heard of Wedding Peach, one of our mentors was the one who made it, actually. And yeah, Yazawa Sensei also teaches at a manga vocational school in Nakano, Japan, just like one of our next mentor, Rena Sensei, who is a Tokyo based professional Japanese mangaka with over 20 years of experience in the Japanese manga industry. She's a manga author who has worked on 12 books with the Japanese publisher Shogakukan and is currently a freelance manga artist. And she also teaches at a manga school in Tokyo, Japan. And finally, last but certainly not the least, our newest mentor in the program, Art Crumbs. Art Crumbs is an American manga artist and Viz Originals creator. They've worked with Viz Media and former Weekly Shonen Jump editor Hisashi Sasaki to publish their Viz Originals one shot manga, Onami. And they've been a panelist and resident artist for some companies you might be familiar with, Wacom, Clip Studio, and they've also spoken at conventions like San Diego Comic Con and New York Comic Con, to name a few. And Art Crumbs currently has an ongoing manga series, Godsbane, being released on Global Comics. So make sure to check them out, you guys. Now, you've once you join the program, you can get a chance to work with these amazing pro mentors and they'll help you get started on your manga journey. But just a reminder, we're not going to be taking in anyone. We want to work with aspiring manga artists who want to be empowered. So this program is for you if you are committed to making your own manga, you have a unique story you want to share with the world by joining contests and getting published, and you are done figuring this all out alone and you're ready to learn from pro mangaka mentors and actually finally have that structure that Steven was talking about. And finally, you long for community and want to connect with fellow mangakas who seek consistency, empowerment, and a great support system, great support community. So, if this sounds like you, then you're invited to apply and join our one shot manga drawing program because the new term starts next month. January 2025, and there are only 15 slots left, you guys. And we're only accepting applicants who are 18 years old and above. So make sure to book your slot now. Book a free manga consultation call with us today. You can scan the QR code that's up on the screen. You can also click the link in the description to sign up because this is your chance now, guys. This is your moment. Like Steven said, it's your time to take action and to finally take that leap, because where will you be tomorrow if you start today? Every masterpiece begins with a blank page and every mangaka starts with a single idea. And starting today means giving life, bringing your stories to life and taking the first steps to actually develop your art and to actually embrace the process of learning how to finally make your manga. And as we've discussed today, it's not going to be easy, but with every panel you draw and every story you tell, you're going to be building your skills, your confidence, and your legacy as a storyteller, as an aspiring mangaka. And you never know what you could achieve unless you finally take that leap, you guys. So feel free to scan that code, take action today, click the link, and book your call because we will be waiting for you. We have the space, you guys. We're accepting 15 more students, and slots are slowly filling up. So it's now or never. All right. We can't wait to see you in class if ever you do decide to apply. So, yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. If you're done, feel free to apply. If you're done, clicking the link, scanning the code, make sure to fill up that form to book a call with us today. All right. Now, as you're doing that, we're going to be taking some questions from the audience. It's time for the Q&A portion. If you have any questions for Steven, or if you have any questions of the program even, drop them in the comments. All right. Let's see. If you guys have any questions, now's the time to ask. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Hope everyone in this chat can achieve your goals in to become a manga artist. Nicely said, nothingness. Exactly. Thank you for that. All right. If you guys have any questions, let us know. While Steven is here to answer them, drop them in the chat. All right. Okay. All right. Gakase asks, is there any way to make people learn about my manga? Or I think this would be a more appropriate question for someone who's actually published their manga before. And I'm not sure if Steven has actually posted his manga. Do you have on his socials? I'm not sure if Steven has an art social has art socials, but yeah. Can you confirm, Steven? Have you managed to like post your have you managed to post your art publicly
Uh,
yet?
no, I'm making like
Hmm.
a concerted effort for now not to, just because I don't want to really focus on.
Hmm.
I'm focusing purely on just my work for now. In the future, I
Right.
would. Where in the past, I probably wouldn't have wanted to, but now I'm like, I would need to, and it's good for
Right.
you to do so.
Right.
But for me right now, no, I'm just focusing just on drawing.
Right. I mean, that's totally fine because at the point of the journey you're in now, it's totally normal to just focus instead of like putting that pressure on yourself to, you know,
Yeah, it
market
depends on the
yourself.
person. Yes,
Yeah.
some people that's very inspiring, but for me, it's just kind of
Yeah.
the way my brain works. That's just kind of static. So I'm
Yeah.
not interested for now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's totally fine. But to answer your question, I guess Gaku like judging from some of our students who have like posted their work before, and even some of our coaches and some of our mentors like Art Crumbs who are publicly online and are posting their work publicly quite frequently actually, and are like self-publishing even. There are online self-publishing platforms out there. You can check out our video on how to publish your manga that's up on the channel right now, where we dive into like different ways you can put your art and your manga out there. Yeah, there's different options. There's a ton of options with the internet. So, make sure to go check out that video. Okay. Now, next question. Do you know any art communities online that support mangakas? Our community. Hello. We're right here. But also there's Reddit. There's a ton of Reddit forums that um support mangakas where tons of mangakas like post their works online on the forum, and also like social media. You can check out X. No, you can check out X. You can check out Blue Sky as well. Blue Sky is another great option, and you can also check out Facebook. Even there are Facebook groups as well. All right. What are my how do I create a cover page now? How do I create a cover page? That's something that we're thinking of making a video on that sometime soon, maybe next year, so watch out for that. Great idea though, thanks for the video idea. Kakase, duly noted. All right, any other questions from you guys for Steven? Oh yeah, Monahan asked, how was the interview, Steven? How was it like chronicling your manga journey so far?
It's kind of funny
Mm.
because when you're practicing a lot, you don't really think a lot about it. But when
Mm.
you kind of sit back and see, like, I didn't realize I did that in 4 months. I thought it was longer. I thought it
Mm.
was a lot longer. Kind of lose track of time when you're like, like when I start drawing in the middle of the day, I don't really realize what time it is, and it'll be like 6 hours
Yeah.
later, and I felt like it was only an hour. So it's kind of good to get perspective. And I was already fine with public speaking, I guess, because I had to do a lot of speaking in the army in front of a lot of people. So on that
Mm.
aspect, it was pretty good. But I could see that being an issue for some people. But everybody's here for the same thing. You don't have to stress out about it. Everybody's trying to learn. Even the
Right.
professionals still learn.
Right, right. Like, and that's kind of interesting to me that you didn't realize that you've come so far in just 4 months. And I
Yeah,
think
I
this,
thought it was
I
like 8 months.
yeah, no, no, like that you posted that first finished Yonkoma of yours just 4 months in because you joined in July and like you posted that
Right.
yeah, in October, I think. So yeah, it was great. It's great that you've come so far, and I'm glad that um this interview gave you the chance to like realize that, oh, okay, you've managed to achieve so much in like just a few months, that's
I hope I got
so
at least one
yeah.
person to take a chance on themselves. That would be
Yeah,
worth it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you never know what you can achieve, you guys, until you try, you know all right, so it's really great. It's really great. Natari asks, how long has this program been going for, and how long will it last? I mean, we're not gonna go away anytime soon, Natari. We're gonna last for as long as possible. I think the program has been going on for like more than a year now, actually, and we've already worked with hundreds of students in that time, and it's been great. It's been great. You can even check out our previous lives on the channel. You can check out our previous videos on the channel to see like how much content, how many topics that we've tackled on this channel already, and how some of our previous conversations with our mentors. Even you can check out those interviews on the channel. So yeah, don't worry, we're not going away anytime soon. If you need more time to prepare yourself to join the program, we'll be waiting. We're not going away. All right. Okay. I don't know how to color or illustrate. Yeah, one you just got to learn the basics. We actually have a video on how you can start making your manga if you don't know how to draw. Um, how to make manga if you can't draw, I think it was. You could check out that video on our channel. We detail the steps that you need to take to actually start, what you need to do if you can't draw. All right. Okay, Clinical asks, Stephen, have you been doing any writing practice, or are you just purely practicing your art at the moment?
I thought about doing that originally, but because things are set up in like a step-by-step process, and the way I looked at it was the same way I'm assuming that the mentors looked at it, is there's no really reason to work on that if you're because it's a visual medium. Um, you need to really work on the fundamentals first. So I do think of ideas. I do write down interesting stuff, but in terms of writing out an actual script, I haven't bothered to do that because I'll get to that in time. When I need to do it, I'll do it. That's one thing I had to learn is what to focus on. That's part of the structure that I needed because you feel like, a chicken with its head cut off. You're just running around. What do I do? I need to do everything. You do, but you need to do everything in a step-by-step process so you can really hone down something and then move forward. So for me, no. But if you have an interesting idea or you have a good joke in your head, if you're going for a joke manga like mine, write it down. Don't forget it. Keep it because you can always come back later to it. But in terms of jumping ahead to that, no, because I'm sticking with the program, going step by step, and
Right.
that is definitely there. I have skimmed ahead to see it. It is there. It is very
Yeah.
extensive.
Yeah.
But no, I'm focusing on just getting my art up to snuff first, and then to get to that.
Yeah. Steven is at the part of the program where he's like still learning most of the basics. All right. But he is gonna get to the part of the program because there is lessons in the program where we teach students how to write, or at least how to start writing their ideas, their story ideas for their one shot, so there it yeah, like Steven said, it's a pretty extensive part of the program, so it's going to take a while to get there because you need to get like your basics down first before you think of
But write down
adding,
the
yeah.
interesting stuff. Don't forget the good stuff. Like I do have a journal of all kinds of ideas. Just,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
still do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great practice, actually. Like, keep a note of the things that interest you and then just write it down and save it for later, because you never know, like, when inspiration strikes you. Right. All right. Are you reading any mangas currently? Clinical asks.
Actually, Art Crumbs recommended me a couple, and well, one of them's in Spanish, so I can't read it. But I've been looking at the art a lot. Toriyama's manga theater. I love the old cartoony style.
Mm.
Volume 1 and Volume 2. Mine got shipped in through Colombia from Florida, and so I guess they're not easy to come by, maybe. But reading, I'm going through the uh, the Full Metal Alchemist Yonkoma collection, which Art Crumbs also recommended to me. It's fantastic. I recommend it, especially if you're looking into jokes or funny stuff, right? A lot of basic monpoos and stuff like that. Did I say that right? Monpoo or monpoo,
Mampu.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Stuff like that. And then reading through, I'm going through the first uh from the first story all the way up to NES Lobby and One Piece just to kind of get down how Oda really captures that emotion. I really want to focus on that, the emotional aspect. And then I'm also reading through the entire collection of Nichijou. Nichijou is my comfort read. That's my comfort. I love to just enjoy Nichijou. That's like if I'm having a hard day, you know what? I'm done today. I'm gonna take time for myself. I'm gonna read some Nichijou. So
Right,
Nichijou, One
right.
Piece for those are the main four really.
I mean, I think, were you saying you're almost gonna start Ennis Lobby for One Piece?
Yeah,
Is that right?
I have the omnibus collections, and I got it
Mm,
all the way up to NES Lobby because I feel like that whole from first
yeah.
chapter to NES Lobby, that is a good study of Oda's work, and I feel like
Yeah.
I consider myself a student of his work specifically. I love his work. I love. There's not a single thing I don't like about it. Right?
Right,
I'm the biggest fanboy you could think of. Right? About every detail.
right,
I love it. It really inspired me. So I'm like, you know what? I want to really focus in on not just to enjoy it. It's really study material, and
right,
I'm happy studying, which is a first in my life. So I'm doing something
right.
right.
I
But
think
yeah,
it's yeah, I think Oda is a great way to study how you can manage to basically world building, and
yeah,
also how you can manage to develop a plot line arc to arc, how he transitions between arcs and how he goes from like one island to the next, because One Piece is all about like going from one island to another, right?
it's an
And
odyssey.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And like in order, because they have to go through all of these different islands, all of these different places, meet all of these different people to get to the One Piece. And it's great because um you have to go through so many different worlds, and I think Oda is a master at that, at establishing all of these different worlds in the same universe that all have their unique conflicts and their unique aspects to them, which I think is so interesting. And it's so interesting to see how the Straw Hats, the cast of characters, the Straw Hats, adapt and react to every single new world that they come into. So it's very fascinating. It's a great study on how
yeah,
Oda,
and even artistically, you can learn a
yeah,
lot because you go from Drum Island, which is all snowy,
yeah.
to Alabasta, which is a desert. So even just and there's a lot of especially you want to draw feet. Oda's a genius at feet. He has so many tricks to how to draw feet because Luffy's never wearing shoes.
Yeah.
There's just so much you can learn even without the story.
Yeah. All right. All right. Now, I think that's all we have for today, you guys. If you don't have any more questions, I think we're that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for our time with Steven today. I would just want to say thank you so much, you guys, for coming onto the live and listening to Steven's story. I hope it's inspired you guys to actually take the leap and start making your manga today like he did all those months and all those years ago. All right. Thank you so much, Steven. Thank you so much for coming to the live and taking the time to be here with us today. Do you have any like last words for our audience for today?
I would just say that I think everybody's had doubts, and you're the only one who could change your life, really. And if you're not satisfied, if you want to do something, you have to choose it. Nobody's going to choose for you. And every day that you waste, you can't buy it back. So you better really think about what you want. If it's you want it, this is the time to actually stop thinking about it and just do it. Don't overthink it like I did.
Right.
It just I spent a few months overthinking it. I could have been 4 months ahead, you know, but I did it, and anybody could do it. It sounds
Yeah.
corny, but it's true. Anybody can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody can do it. It just takes that extra courage to
Just
actually push yourself to
yeah,
do it.
just
Yeah.
I guess the main thing, just take a chance on yourself. Just do that.
Right. Right. And that's beautiful last words to end this interview on, guys. Take a chance on yourself because you never know. I mean, have a little more faith in yourself. As long as you're passionate about it, as long as you love doing it and you want to do it and you could see yourself doing this like for the rest of your life, I guess, or like as a career or something that you just want to keep doing for the rest of your life, then
I
why
hope
not
to die with a
pursue?
pen in my hand. I hope. That's what I hope.
Yeah.
What was he drawing? What was he drawing? That's what I hope.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll
At
never
the
know.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. You never know what you can achieve. And once you do achieve it, once you, I don't know, leave this plane of existence, and once you've done all that you can do, and like drawn anything, all of the things that you've managed to draw and could draw, then you never know that it might leave an impact on someone, right? So there's always that chance. So take that chance on yourself, you guys. And I think that's a good way to end the live. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming. Thank you so much, Steven. And
Yep.
make sure to check out the channel for any upcoming updates about future lives, future workshops, even if you guys liked the Yonkoma manga workshop that we did just last weekend. Look out for more of those definitely in the in the next few months, because we'll be having a few more workshops uh, in the future. Prepare to get roasted. Right.
Oh
So,
yeah.
okay, you guys, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to stay updated, and we'll see you in our next live. Thank you so
Thank
much, you
you.
guys. Have a good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you guys are. And bye bye. Thanks, everyone.